Hey guys, I'm gonna do a little stream. I'm gonna try something different. I have been tasked with preaching tomorrow night at a revival, and the topic I've been given is John 10:10. Um, and I want to look at this through several different ways. So first, we're gonna read this, and then we'll we'll talk about it, and then if anybody has questions, you can just type them in or ask, and we'll go from there. All right. I'm going to start at 10. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life, to have it to the full. And that's the abundant life um, verse. And, you know, you kind of have to step in every good depiction or understanding. You need to step back and look at what he's saying in context. So let's back up just a little bit and let's go through the whole chapter from 1 to 10. Very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. When he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out, when he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's face. Jesus used this figure of speech, but the Pharisees didn't understand what he was telling them. Therefore, Jesus said again, very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep. All who have come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep have not listened to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Uh, so I've been researching, reading everything I can see, and watching different videos. And so, who is the thief that Jesus is talking about here? Um, and let's just dive deep into it a little bit. So he's talking to the Pharisees, and he is and talking in parables like he does. Um, a lot of people just would say, "Hey, this the thief is Satan." I'm of the mindset that this isn't Satan. It's people or doing Satan's work. So we are the sheep. Jesus is the shepherd, and in life, we have these things that we're trying to do right. We're trying to follow God and do things the way we should. We're trying to follow the shepherd's voice. And there will be something in our life that jumps in and tries to take us away from what we're doing, tries to change things. If you're struggling with your past, well, the devil will send someone to you to try to lure you back to that lifestyle, even though you're trying to live a better life and follow the voice of Jesus. So that is the thief. There will, there are always going to be a thief in the night, but you have to, focus on God's voice and following Jesus. You know, I've worked in the homeless community for about a year and a half now, And these things, I mean, so many people they try to do right. They try to better the situation. They try to just live the right way. And then here comes somebody with a bottle of liquor, a beer, and then they're right back to that lifestyle that they can't escape from. And that's the devil, who his main goal, or someone who's working for the devil, and their goal is to keep you away from God. And in the end, it's the battle for souls, just in Revelation. And it's spiritual warfare. And that's one of the things I preach on a lot is let's have that conversation. Let's work on the armor, the full armor of God. Protect yourself from everything that the enemy does to just take your focus away from God and doing what's right in His eyes and following God. I found this video here, and it's pretty good, and it describes a lot of what I've been reading. So I'm gonna play this, and we'll go from there after.
In John 10:10, here's the way John 10:10 reads, and this is Jesus Christ speaking to his audience. He says, "The thief does not come except to steal and kill and destroy. I came so that they can have life and have it abundantly." Jesus Christ came so we could have life abundantly. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. It is commonly taught, and I believed and taught, that the thief is Satan. But it's not, as we'll see from the context. The thief are those people who don't follow Christ, who don't lead people to Christ, who don't go in among God's people, among God's sheep, through Jesus Christ, but come in some other way. That's the thief. It's people who would be among the sheep of God and yet deny Christ, deny his miracles, deny the resurrection, deny everlasting life, deny salvation through Christ. That is the thief here in John 10:10. And why is that so important to know? It's almost like a sleight of mind that if I can get someone to say, oh, the thief is Satan. Well, Satan's in a lot of different places. He works in a lot of different ways, very amorphous. Yeah, the thief is Satan, so what? What are we going to do about that? But if I know that the thief are those people who work for Satan, then I am more attentive to the people I'm listening to. I put more energy into reading and understanding the Bible, because that's how you're going to separate truth from error. If I know the truth that the thief is Satan and that Satan's people have infiltrated the flock, then all of a sudden I'm on the alert for false teachers. Who am I listening to? Where do I go to church? What does my pastor believe? Jesus Christ in John chapter 10 verse 1 gives us insight into the thief. He says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, the one who does not enter into the sheepfold," in other words, enter into the flock of God. They're in the churches, they're among God's people. Some of them are leading the churches, and they're leading God's people. And Christ says, the one who does not enter into the sheepfold by the door climbs up some other way. That person is a thief and a robber. The thief in John 10:10 is a person who doesn't enter through Christ. And we'll read about that. Before we do, is that going on? Well, yes. And it's always gone on. I mean, you go back and, did Moses struggle with unbelievers? Yes. Did Moses struggle with unbelievers? Yes. Did David struggle with unbelievers and unbelieving leaders? Absolutely. What about the priesthood? First Samuel tells us that some of the priests were children of the devil. Did Jeremiah deal with false leaders among God's people? Absolutely. We go down, did Jesus Christ deal with false leaders among God's people? Absolutely. So, so what's going on here? What does this do for you and me? It tells us we have to pay attention to who's leading us. We have to pay attention to who is teaching us the Bible and what they say and what they believe, so that we are led properly to Christ. Before I did this teaching, I thought, I ought to go on the internet and just take a quick look. And so, what do I find on the internet? And this isn't 10 years ago. This is today. I found it on the internet today. Seminary president admits she doesn't believe in heaven, miracles, or Christ's resurrection. You don't believe in the resurrection of Christ? Well, you're not going to get born again. Pastor of a Methodist church is raising his son to believe that the Bible records are not literal. His church doesn't know he's an atheist. The guy's an atheist. He's running a church. He hasn't bothered to tell his church. Who's teaching you? Do you ever get that funny feeling when you're in church or in your believer, like, this guy might not believe in the Bible? Have you ever thought about asking him? There's only one way to be saved, to be born again, and that's through Jesus Christ. Who's ever teaching us should be leading us to Jesus Christ. And here's a third, and this is the last one I'll pester you with. There are a lot of them. Atheist pastor does not believe, quote, the need for salvation. But he remains in ministry because, quote, these are my people. This is the context in which I work. These are the people that I know. What, you want a job so you're leading God's people? Go get a different job, please. God's people need to know the truth. God's people need to be saved. God's people need to know who Jesus Christ is and believe in the resurrection. You know these people, so you're continuing in Christian ministry. The article goes on, in the pulpit, his mode is to talk as if he does believe, but language is ambiguous and can be heard in different ways. Yeah. Who are our leaders? See, if the thief is Satan, well, it's a thief. But if the thief are leaders who have infiltrated the church, all of a sudden I'm on the alert. I need to be asking questions about who's teaching me the Bible and what they believe, and are they leading me toward Christ? Absolutely. So going back to John, so let's begin to exegete now John chapter 10. So it starts out in verse 1. As we read, Christ said, "Truly, truly, I say to you." Fair question. Who's the you? When Christ looks at the audience and says, when Christ looks out and says, "Verily, verily, truly, truly, I say to you," who's the you that he's talking to? Well, to get that, we've got to get the context. Now, if you've listened to me teach and train for a while, then you know one of the things I teach is that, and rightfully so, is that verse breaks and chapter markings were not in the original text. The original text, as it was penned both in Hebrew and in Greek, had no punctuation, no verses, no chapters. Now, the verses and the chapters can be very helpful. I like them myself. They can be really helpful, but sometimes they lead us astray. So in John chapter 10, verse 1, we can get the idea from reading it, "Verily, verily, I say to you," that Christ is like starting over, like he's talking to a new audience or something. He's not. When he says, "I say to you," who is the you he's talking to? Well, if we take chapter 10 and take our little eraser and erase it and just read the record as it comes out of John chapter 9, we'll back it up even further, but I want to show you this verse. But in John chapter 9, the closing verses of John chapter 9 are verse 40, those of the Pharisees. Okay, this is going to be his audience that he's talking to. Those of the Pharisees who were with him. Who's the him? Not Jesus, not in John 9:40. Those are the Pharisees who were with him, with the blind man that he healed in John chapter 9. John chapter 9 is about a blind man who was healed. And some of those Pharisees, was such a prominent miracle. No one in the history of the world had ever been recorded as being born blind and then seeing. And Jesus Christ did that. And so there were people around him that were just amazed. They were in awe. They wanted to experience the moment or ask questions or whatever. And so some of the Pharisees of John 9 had not left. So verse 40, those of the Pharisees who were with him, with the blind man, heard these things. Heard what things? Heard what Jesus Christ was saying. We'll go into that in just a minute. And said to Jesus, we are not blind too, are we? And Jesus says in verse 41, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But now, since you say we see, your sin remains. So Jesus Christ, now watch this. If we take away the chapter break in John 10, we have verse 9:40, those of the Pharisees said to Jesus, we are not blind too, are we? Jesus said, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But now since you say we see, your sin remains. Truly, truly, I say to you, the one who does not enter into the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up some other way, that person is a thief and a robber. Who is he talking to? He's talking to the Pharisees. And were they entering into the sheep through Jesus Christ? Were they using him as the door? Were they promoting him as the Messiah? Absolutely not. They were trying to kill him. So he said to them, you are blind and you're a thief and you're climbing into the sheepfold by some other way. And we'll read about this. Now this happened, we learn John chapter 7 to the first half of John chapter 10 is one big context. One big context. John 7, John 8, John 9, and the first half of John 10 all occurred at the Feast of Tabernacles in Jerusalem. So Jesus Christ goes to Jerusalem for the Feast of Tabernacles, big, huge annual feast. And Jesus Christ is going to be there and he's going to minister. And he gets into a very, very heated discussion with the religious leaders there. And listen to what Christ said of the religious leaders. John chapter 8, verse 37, I know you are Abraham's seed, yet you seek to kill me because my word has no place in you. So the religious leaders were trying to kill Christ. Did they think of him as the door of the sheepfold? Did they think of him as the good shepherd? No, I don't think so. They were trying to kill him. And verse 39, they answered and said, our father's Abraham. And Christ said, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. Absolutely. Wow. You would know the Messiah. Verse 40, but now you're seeking to kill me, a man who's told you the truth that I heard from God. Abraham did not do this. And then he went on to say, you're doing the works of your father. And Jesus went on to say in verse 43, why do you not understand what I'm saying? Because you're not able to hear my word. By the way, I know I'm reading through this pretty quickly, but this would be a really good time just to pause the teaching tape and read John chapter 8, John chapter 9, John chapter 10, and get all the verses that I'm not able to cover, because this record is so potent. This record is so powerful, and this dialogue between Jesus and the Pharisees is so pointed, and we see how a good, godly man, Jesus, stands against error. Verse 44 of John chapter 8, you were of your father the devil. Can it be any plainer than that? You were of your father the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth because there's no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of them. So this is Jesus talking to the religious leaders who are leading God's people. You are of your father, the devil. I can't speak about these people and to what degree they're of the devil, but if a seminary professor doesn't believe in the resurrection of Christ, she needs to step down. If a man in a pulpit doesn't believe in Christ's resurrection, he needs to find something else to do. The day of judgment is real. It's real. It's talked about all over the Bible. We'd actually be doing somebody a favor to say, sir, you really ought to step down out of the pulpit and find another job, because I'll tell you, On the day of judgment, people that have led others away from Jesus Christ are going to be in serious, serious trouble. And we don't want that for anybody. And we do want as many people as possible to be led to Christ. Well, after Christ called them, the religious leaders, the children of the devil in John 8:44, what happened? Verse 59, therefore they picked up stones to throw at him. But Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. So now we're at the end of John 8, and once again, the chapter break between John 8 and John 9, when it starts John chapter 9, verse 1, we need to see that as a continuation of John chapter 8. The religious leaders were going to stone him. He leaves the temple, and what happens? Chapter 9, verse 1, and as he passed by, he saw a man blind from his birth. Passed by what? He's walking out of the temple, and as he passes by, he sees a man blind from his birth. Absolutely, and I'm not going to read the record in John chapter 9, but I'd encourage you to stop the teaching and go back and read that teaching and get the fullness of it. John chapter 9, verse 14 says, now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Jesus healed on the Sabbath. So what happened is the religious leaders then called a man in. Now he was born blind. Are the religious leaders happy about that? No. No. See, religious people that are of the devil are more concerned about demonic regulations like you can't heal on the Sabbath, which, by the way, they made up. That's not part of the Mosaic Law. The Mosaic Law never said don't heal on the Sabbath. Jesus Christ never broke the law. Jesus Christ never sinned. Healing on the Sabbath wasn't a sin. The demonic leaders decided it would be a sin. It ends up hurting God's people, but that's what demonic leaders do. They do things that can look religious, but they hurt God's people. And so Jesus Christ ignored their religious, made up religious regulation. He ignored it, and he healed a guy on the Sabbath. And could the religious leaders rejoice in the healing of a man born blind? No. and so basically, verse 28, John chapter 9, verse 28, they heaped insults on the man and said, you are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. So the religious leaders just heap insults on this guy who's been healed by Jesus Christ. And so verse 34 of John 9, they answered and said to this man, you were born entirely in sins, and are you teaching us? And they cast him out. They kicked him out of the temple and synagogue system. That would make life very difficult for this man if he wanted to stay going to synagogue, and that kind of thing would make life very difficult for him. And so Jesus found the man. And Jesus, and you can read the record continuing in John chapter 9, Jesus finds the man and tells him, I am the Messiah. You know, eternal life is through me. And it's in this conversation with Jesus and the blind man, with some Pharisees still standing around, that Jesus then said, for judgment I came into the world, that those who do not see will see, and those who see will become blind. And those of the Pharisees who were with him heard these things and said to him, are we blind too? Jesus said, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But now since you say, we see, your sin remains. Truly, truly, I say to you, the one who does not enter into the sheepfold by the door, but climbs up some other way, that person is a thief and a robber. What's he telling them? You are thieves and robbers. That's what he's telling them. Talk about bold, talk about honest. You know, if you're going to have a chance to change from error to truth, somebody's got to tell you the truth. Maybe some of these Pharisees believed later. There were Pharisees that later believed. He said, you're a thief and a robber. The one, verse 2, John chapter 10, verse 2. But the one who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. Therefore Jesus said to them again, this is John 10, verse 7. Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. And then again in verse 9, I am the door. So how do we enter into the sheep properly? We use the door, Jesus Christ. Wonderful. And then verse 10, after saying in verse 9, I am the door, Jesus says, the thief does not come except to steal, kill, and destroy. And if you look at the way the Pharisees treated Jesus, they were trying to kill him. If you look at the way they treated the man born blind, that they would have they destroyed his connection with the synagogue. They stole joy from him, heaping insults on him. People that are ungodly steal and kill and destroy. And sadly, one of the most important things they steal is because they don't lead people to Christ. They don't talk to people about the resurrection, or they don't talk to people about the seriousness of the day of judgment. That they destroy opportunities they have to understand the Bible, believe the Bible, and come to Jesus Christ and believe in his resurrection and believe in the day of judgment. And they'll do well on the day of judgment because they've obeyed God, and they'll be rewarded for their life, instead of standing there at the day of judgment and said, gosh, I wish somebody had taught me the truth. That's why it's important that we know who our shepherds are over us. Are they leading us to Christ? Plenty of shepherds in among the sheep who aren't doing that. And realistically, it's our job to know the Bible well enough and be able to hear Christ's voice in it, that we can tell truth from error. Absolutely. In verse 11, after talking about the thief, Jesus Christ said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And in verse 14, he repeats again, I am the good shepherd. Wow. We're saved people are God's sheep. Sadly, among them, thieves have entered. People that don't go through the door of Jesus Christ, and people who don't lead people to Christ, and people who don't believe the Bible. And Christ is the good shepherd, and thankfully he has shepherds under him who work with him, who follow him, who lead people to him, and they enter the door, they enter into the sheep through Jesus Christ. You and I have the responsibility to make sure that the people that we are learning from are good, godly men and women, and not thieves and robbers and people trying to enter in among the sheep through a door that isn't Jesus Christ. Let's look for those good leaders. Thank you so much for watching, liking.
All right. Yeah, I came across this the day before yesterday, and it's really been eye opening. Um, so this is, I'm going to be preaching on this tomorrow night, and a lot of these things are going to be in what I say. Um, yeah. So if you are struggling and you are trying to follow the voice of God, then you need to rid yourself of the people who keep drawing you back to the way of life that doesn't honor God. You, those are the thieves that Satan has sent, for you. Um, Jesus is the good shepherd, and if you were lost, he will leave the 99 to come for you. That's the truth. Um, so many times that the things I battled in my life, that this is hard. The things I battled, the addictions, the sin, in order for me to get back to following God and following his voice and following his path for me, is to look at and distance myself and kick out people and places and things that are not of God and not honor God. Um, so to live that life, it's hard because you're gonna be targeted. You're gonna be mocked. Um, the most, I guess you could say, what's the word I'm looking for? There's so much bias against Christians. There's so much bias against followers that people look for any mistake you make, and they will amplify it and do everything they can to make you feel some type of way about it, whether it be guilt, shame, um, embarrassed. And those are the people who are, oh, what is the word? Criticizing you, who are throwing all these things at you. Those are the people who are trying to take you away from God, take you away from following. And, you know, if you are to see people who, even if you make a mistake, who walk beside you and lift you up, those are the people you need to surround yourself with. Um, those are the people who follow God and follow his his teachings and want the best for you. Not everybody in the world wants you to succeed. Not everybody wants you to follow God. Not everybody wants you to enter the kingdom of heaven. A lot of, there's so many that want the exact opposite because they know, hey, I'm failing. I'm going to take as many people with me. And when we should be lifting people up and taking them on this journey with us, and you know enter into the kingdom of heaven with them with us, or see them when it's their turn to get there. uh, so yeah, in my ministry, what I see so many times that I'll go out and I'll see a group of my homeless people that I minister to, I talk to, I speak to, and we'll start talking and be in that conversation, and then they'll be talking about something that happened and the reaction to it. Well, that if someone who, let's say, stole every belonging, and the response to it is, I'm just going to give up, I'm going to go get high and just forget all this. Why were you around that person to begin with? Are you if you have already been robbed and I don't know, stolen from and cast down, you you've got to, and I'll tell them, you've got to be careful who you surround yourself with, and surround yourself with people who are there to help, or who are there to lift you up and support you. So I'm gonna end because I have an appointment here in a few minutes. Just want to say thanks for watching, and this is a different stream than I normally do, and I may get back to this. I hope I do. I will probably stream, the sermon tomorrow. Um, I just, I'm trying some different things. So, all right. God bless. Have a great day. Thank you.